This is Family Time 102, and we're talking about ethical constructs. This is kind of a challenging topic. We're going to talk about, in class, 4 kind of components of ethics that are very closely tied to each other. We're going to talk about equity, we're going to talk about fairness, we're going to talk about justice, and we're going to talk about respect. So have you ever heard the term equity before, Claire? Sort of. Do you have any idea what equity means?
Money?
Oh, we have talked about equity before in terms of like you buy a house and you build up equity, things like that. That is one definition of equity, 100%. In this case, we're talking about ethics. Equity is kind of meeting people where they are. It's different than equality. We often think we should treat people equally, and perhaps we should in terms of equality of opportunity, equality in how we divvy out our kindness, those sorts of things. But there's an image that's kind of gone around on social media and stuff. I don't know where it originated, but it's a good visual of what equity is. It shows 3 people standing at a fence, and one person is tall enough to see over the fence already. One person is a little shorter, they're not able to quite see over the fence, and then another person is a lot shorter, and they're not able to see over the fence at all. And there's 3 boxes that they could stand on. If they give 1 box to each person, that is equal. That's equality. Everyone gets 1 box. But that means the person who is tall enough to already see over the fence is way over the fence now. The person who was just a little short of seeing over the fence, they're kind of at the perfect height now to see over. With the person who was much shorter, standing on the 1 box, still isn't high enough to see over the fence. So equity would be meeting people where they're at, where if you had those 3 boxes, the tallest person doesn't need a box at all. So then if you give 2 boxes to the shortest person, that person is now able to see over the fence, as is the person who is in the middle, who has 1 box and see over the fence, and the tallest person can see over the fence. Now everyone can see over the fence. So that's kind of an idea with ethical constructs, and those go to things like, a lot of times there are legal things, say like Title IX or things like that, that help. The idea is to balance the playing field a little bit. Instead of distributing everything totally equally, you try to distribute things equitably, whereas these people may need more assistance, that sort of thing. That kind of makes sense? Mm-hmm. Then there's the idea of fairness. What do you think about fairness? What does fairness mean?
It means like that everybody gets the same thing. Like it wouldn't be fair if somebody got a cookie and the other person got 2 cookies just because they're older.
Okay, that's true. Now, what if, let's say, you are doing something, let's use school. Okay. Let's say you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, you're doing all of your schoolwork, you're not causing any problems, things like that, and somebody else is maybe making some bad decisions, maybe misbehaving in class, not doing their schoolwork, and then the teacher hollers at everybody. Is that fair?
No, but it would be kind of hard to pick out all the people, and the teachers already do so much.
Well, that's good. That's very nice of you to say that. My only point with that is, you're right. Sometimes it's hard to be totally equitable, to give every single individual person exactly what they need, and to give this person the right amount of discipline, this person the right amount of support, it's like all those sorts of things. So then sometimes there are sort of blanket consequences or supports that are given to everybody. But if we're talking about fairness, sometimes we can feel like, well, that's not really fair that I got in trouble when I wasn't the one doing it. And that happens sometimes, especially when you're a kid. It's easy to feel that way sometimes. So if we're talking about fairness, that's one of the things to consider. Is like, is it really fair to distribute it this way, or for these people to get the same punishment or the same reward or whatever it might be? That's the idea of fairness, where ideally fairness should be sort of an impartiality, meaning like I'm not swayed by who you are or maybe something that you've even done in the past. I'm trying to take each issue as it is, and I'm trying to react appropriate to the circumstances. That's kind of what fairness really is at its core. Kind of makes sense. Ideally, the legal system, we want to be as fair as possible. We want it to be impartial. We want to look at the evidence, the facts of a case, and not be divvied out, not be managed differently based on a person's background, their race, their socioeconomic status, those sorts of things. That kind of leads us into justice. You ever heard that word before, justice? What do you think justice means?
Like people being free?
Oh, well, yeah, that could be part of it. Sure. In a free system, you hope that you have a strong system of justice. And a lot of times that kind of, again, these concepts sometimes kind of blur together a little bit. But the idea of justice would be like kind of trying to give equal opportunities, trying to, back to like fairness, trying to distribute consequences in a fair manner. And justice could maybe be perceived as like the appropriate consequences for the action, positive or negative. We know all actions have consequences. Generally, you make good choices and good things happen. You make bad choices and bad things happen. Sometimes people do things that are maybe unethical and they still reap the benefits. So justice in that case would be like, well, somebody did something that was illegal or not ethical, or they hurt someone else. So justice would maybe be then they have some negative consequence. On the flip side, if someone does things in a positive way and is trying to elevate other people, hopefully they get positive consequences. That's sort of the idea of justice. And then the last thing we're going to talk about in class is the idea of respect. What does respect mean to you?
Like that if somebody was talking, I would respect them and not interrupt them. Or if somebody was asking me a question, I would, like, if somebody else was asking me a question while somebody else would be, I would say 1 second, so it'd be respectful to the other person, so then they can keep doing the question that they're asking me.
That's a very good example. Just communicating with people, really listening to people and giving them your time. That's a great way to show respect and to be respectful. And the idea of respect is just sort of being worthy of high regard. Like, maybe think of it as like looking up to someone if you respect them. And respect is also important because we have to have self-respect. What do you think self-respect means?
That means that you shouldn't doubt yourself, that you should think you can do something even if you think it's hard. You can always do something if you put your mind to it.
That's very good. I think that's a great, this kind of self-efficacy, which I think is it's kind of like the next step of self-respect. Self-respect sort of is understanding that you're worthy of good things and you're capable, and that leads to that self-efficacy. That's beautifully said. That's exactly what we're talking about, is you kind of have this belief that even though things are difficult, even though I'm going to face challenges, I'm capable of overcoming them, of learning and growing, and I deserve good things. So I think that's very well said. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about in class. Those are terms that come up sometimes, and we talk about ethics sometimes, and ethics is pretty hard to wrap our head around. It's kind of like how we make decisions based on our morals, based on our beliefs. And we spent a lot of time early in the year talking about our system of beliefs, our core values. And then our ethics is really like, how do we live those things out? How do we apply them? How do we apply constructs like the 4 things we're talking about? And then the other thing we're going to talk about is how these ideas, how these ethical constructs impact our schools and our communities. Those are the discussions we're going to have in class this week, but thank you so much for talking about them with me. They're kind of tough concepts, and you did a great job giving some examples. All right. Until next time, for Family Time 103, much love.